remains leave is granted. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House censures the Prime Minister for, one, his continued economic failure, which has created great uncertainty and burdens for families, individuals, young people, seniors, small business and farmers. Number two, his inability to uphold the standards required of a Prime Minister. Three, his failure of policy which has delivered nothing but false dawns. And four, his continued failure to deliver what he promises. Mr. Speaker, at last, of course, the Prime Minister has accepted a motion of censure, and it is appropriate, as this could well be the last day, despite the fact that he told his caucus that he'd bring us all back next year so that we could limber up for the election. Well, let's see if we can take the opportunity today to do a bit of limbering up for the election. But it is an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to allow this House to debate some of the issues that the Australian public will be wanting the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to debate over the next few weeks. And it is an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for this House and for both sides of politics to crystallise what the election campaign is going to be about. Now, no doubt the Prime Minister has in his own mind that he wants to have it on a referendum on this or that issue, and no doubt again in the course of his reply we will get some indication from the Prime Minister as to the sort of issues that he regards as being important in the election campaign. But can I put it to the House, Mr. Speaker, and I believe that in doing this I will be speaking on behalf of everybody on this side of the Parliament, and I believe that I will also be speaking on behalf of millions of Australians all over this country, including hundreds of thousands of men and women who, as you all know only too well, as people like Sylvia Smith in Bass and Maggie Diem in Macquarie and Harry Woods in Page and George Gear in Canning and Mary Crawford in Ford and Peter Knott in Gilmore and Gary Gibson, Peter, you know this is true, and Gary Gibson in Moreton and Barry Cunningham in Macmillan and Peter Dodd in Leichhardt and Gordon Bilney in Kingston, Neville Newell in Richmond and Peter Cleland in McEwen and Bob Kenilworth in Dunkley. And can I say, Mr. Speaker, courtesy. Can I say, Mr. Speaker? A few of you are feeling a bit lonely. Can I say, Mr. Speaker, that courtesy of Laurie Brereton, Mary Eason's going to be a bowler from behind the field and she's going to be added to that list. But, Mr. Speaker, you know as well as I do, and all of those members that I've named in that list that I've just read out, and they are, of course, as you all know, the principal marginal seat holders of the Australian Labor Party, and they are the people who are going to be on the front line of defending the failed policies of the past 13 years. All of you know that there are hundreds of thousands of Australians who have always voted for your party, You've habitually voted for the Labor Party. There are hundreds of thousands of them, and they are literally aching for the opportunity to vote against you at the next election. And that is the way. And all of those people, Mr. Speaker, I really, one shouldn't have any sympathy for them, but you know, I can just understand how desperate many of those feel. Because, Mr. Speaker, just imagine they have spent the last 9 months watching the major battlefield of politics in Australia being not over the middle ground of Australian politics, not over a constituency that normally belongs to the Liberal Party and the National Party, but the last 9 months, the main battleground of Australian politics has been over the allegiance of people who have habitually voted Labor all of their lives. And they feel so let down and they feel so betrayed and they feel so angry. And whether you go to the inner suburbs of Sydney, and you ought to go there occasionally, Laurie, if you can still find your way, whether you go to the inner suburbs of Sydney, whether you go to the rural areas of Queensland, whether you go to the rural areas of Tasmania or Western Australia, you find the refrain, Mr. Speaker, of deserted, despairing, betrayed, true believers of the Australian Labor Party, and they are really wanting the opportunity to vote against this government. They are determined to vote this government out. They are determined to tell an arrogant, out-of-touch Prime Minister that he no longer represents their best interests, and they are determined to wreak their vengeance on the Australian Labor Party at the next election. And no matter how much, Harry, you and Maggie and all of those other people, no matter how much you will try and dissociate yourself from this bloke at the dispatch box, no matter... Oh, never, no, thank you very much, thank you, very good on you, Maggie, good on you. No, God. Hey, Harry, would you say that too? Would you say that, Harry?
Oh, no,
Harry.
Resume your seat.
Harry, yes or no, Harry? Yes or no?
The Leader of the Opposition will refer to members by their electorate.
Hey, Graham, will you say that?
The Leader of the Opposition.
But Mr. Speaker, I tell you, can I tell you, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, can I tell you the reason?
On my right.
Can I tell you the reason?
The Leader of the Opposition has the call.
Can I tell you the reason?
Member for Gilmore.
Can I tell you, Mr. Speaker, the reason that those hundreds of thousands of former true believers of the Labor Party are aching for the opportunity to vote against this government? There's one very, very simple reason. I mean, the Leader of the government, the Prime Minister, has always paraded himself as a bit of a specialist. Well, in a sense, they recognise that. They see Paul Keating very much as the foreign debt specialist. They see him as the high interest rate specialist. They see him as the high unemployment specialist. But most importantly of all, Mr. Speaker, the people of Australia, not only those hundreds of thousands that are going to walk away from you whenever the election is held, but also millions of other Australians, Mr. Speaker, they see Paul Keating as the divided society specialist. And the worst legacy of this man and of this government, when it is voted out of office, will be the extent to which it has divided the Australian community, the extent to which it has put one Australian against another, the extent to which it has presided over a widening of the gap between the rich and the poor, the extent to which it has sought to play pressure group politics to the detriment of the interests of the mainstream of the Australian community. And this man will wear the mark of dividing Australian society, of being a leader who has wounded and wrecked rather than healing and uniting, as a leader who has seen partisan political advantage in setting one group against another. And if ever there is a demonstration, Mr. Speaker, of the futility of that approach, if ever there has been a demonstration of the failure of that approach, it is, of course, in relation to the issue about which the Prime Minister and I have just spoken, and that is the wood chip debate. The reason that you are in a mess on forest is that you've politicised the issue to the detriment of the national interest. And that is why you are in an absolute mess on this particular subject. Mr. Speaker, as I look back over the last 8 or 9 months, Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of the infinite variety. I am reminded of the infinite variety of the attacks that have been mounted on me and on the opposition by the Prime Minister. I mean, when I was first elected on the 30th of January, the Prime Minister and all of his colleagues, they embarked upon this tremendous campaign to talk about the past, to talk about the 1950s, to try and create the impression that the government stands for the future and the coalition stands for the past. Well, we had an opportunity. You say it's true. Well, I'm glad you say it's true. I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you do, because we had a marvellous opportunity a few weeks ago to see who's for the past and who's for the future in the dispute about CRA. And as I listened to that dispute, I heard words, I heard language.
Order.
I heard a violence of language and a violence of words that I thought had disappeared from the Australian political and industrial scene. I heard people talk about drawing a line in the sand. I heard people talk about inflicting pain. I heard people talk about chasing companies down rabbit holes. I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of pain inflicted. There was about $200 million of pain inflicted on the Australian economy. There was enormous pain inflicted on a leather exporter I know in Western Australia, who, after struggling for years to win an export order in Southeast Asia, suffered the ignominy of seeing his export order tied up on a wharf that had been rendered useless by the MUA strike, and as a result of all of his years of work, he lost the order to a competitor in another part of Southeast Asia. Now that's the kind of pain, and when I listen to that, when I listen to the language of people like Jenny George, the language of people like Bill Keating, the language of people like Doug Cameron and Tim Pallas, I thought I was hearing debates from years ago when I heard this old-fashioned, class-driven language of the trade union leadership of Australia. And of course that brings us inexorably to the Prime Minister. Now, where was he? He was in Japan. There he was in Japan, stranded in his irrelevance so far as this particular dispute is concerned. Absolutely stranded. I mean, Mr. Speaker, it really did put me in mind of the opening over of a test match. You get the opening over of a test match, and the bowling was being opened by Bob Hawke and Jenny George, and you have Bill Keating keeping wickets, and you have Tim Pallas and Doug Cameron in first and second slip. And where's the Prime Minister? He's been consigned to fine leg. And don't you feel lonely, Laurie? You will have to bring out